Jeremy?
You're good, you're on.
Okay.
It is 7 o'clock, so we will go ahead and call the May 27th, 2025 Plan Commission meeting to order. Starting with roll call.
Adams,
Here.
Bruce,
Here.
Shaw,
Here.
Summers,
Here.
and Paniro, Paulson, and Sonnentag are absent and excused. The first item on this agenda is appointment of acting chair for this meeting, and Commissioner Summers has agreed to serve as acting chair if that is the will of the commission.
I'll nominate Aaron Summers to be the chair, the acting chair for tonight's meeting. And I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Right, we will go ahead and start with the public hearings. As a reminder, speakers are limited to 3 minutes. We'll start with in-person speakers, and I will go ahead and officially open the public hearing for revisions to zoning ordinance at 7:01 p.m.
And Chair Summers, I have a couple registration or a couple comments I just want to enter into the record. We received statements from Tom Jansma, M&T Real Estate Investments LLC, which owns 8311 and 8321 University, as well as Jeff Rudebush of Rudebush Commercial Investments, the listing agent for the same properties. And both of them support the addition of indoor sales or service as a conditional use in the Research Park zoning district.
Thank
So
you.
that's all we received for statements prior to the meeting.
Thank you.
We do have registrations. Do you mind if I just go ahead?
Yeah, sorry.
So we have registrations regarding the zoning code update from Bill Connors of Smart Growth Greater Madison. The Connors.
Right, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. Smart Growth opposes part of the new text regarding building height and the definition of extinguished grade. The language that you reviewed at a recent past meeting had made progress in the right direction, and the newest language is actually going in the reverse direction. There's a 15% limit in that building height provision, the new text of the building height provision, and because of that limit, any building on a site with an elevation where the ground is highest along the front of the building, then slopes downward toward the rear of the building. The front of the building would need to be at least 80 feet tall in order to avoid having to lop off part of the top story in the rear part of the building. As provided shown in the illustration that you received, for a building that is 60 feet tall at the front, a step down is required, lopping off the top story at the back of the building would be required because the building would be allowed to be no more than 69 feet tall at the back of the building in exposure. If you adopt the newest proposed text, including the 15% limit, the vast majority of new buildings on sites that slope down from the front of the building will be required to lop off part of the back of part of that top story at the rear of the building. The staff memo says the step down requirement has been eliminated, but the 15% limit has effectively put that step down requirement back in. For a building that is 60 feet tall in front, it would be reasonable to allow grading at the back so that you would only have 69 feet of exposed facade at the back of the building. However, the definition of established grade doesn't allow you to measure from where the grading is. It has to be where the ground was before the grading. So you can't like fix the problem by grading the back side of the building and making it 69 feet tall. The newest proposed text will eliminate housing units and make new housing units more expensive, both outcomes that are the opposite of what the Plan Commission and Common Council has said that you wanted to achieve with the new zoning code. Smart Growth urges you to eliminate the 15% limit from the building height provision, or that's not acceptable to you all. Increase that limit to 20 or 25%. The established grade provision appears to require someone to, I'm out of time, huh? I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have our next speaker, and the only other speaker we have for this item is Mitch, I'm sorry for mispronouncing, Boschkopf. Are you present? Did you wish to speak on this? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You know what? I knew that too. So we don't have any others. Are there any other speakers on the zoning ordinance public hearing? Turn back to you.
Is there anyone online that wishes to speak?
I do not see anyone online.
Then we will go ahead and close the hearing at 7:06 p.m. The next hearing tonight,
Sorry. I can go back.
going a little fast, is for the revisions to sign code, and we will go ahead and open that hearing at 7:07 p.m.
I did not receive any registrations on this topic, and nor has anyone indicated they wish to speak.
No one online either. Double check.
I'll double check. Nope, I don't see anyone online.
Okay, and we will go ahead and close the hearing at 7:07 p.m. Moving on to the first agenda item for tonight is the approval of the minutes from the May 13th, 2025 meeting. Does anyone have any changes or comments? Okay, then we will go ahead and approve the minutes as submitted. Next item on the agenda is the specific implementation plan modification for fence at Century Harbor Condos, 2841 Century Harbor Road. And we will look to staff for comments on this.
Yeah. Thank you. So we do have at least one person here who could respond to any questions you may have. We today sent a communication to the applicant as well as I let you all know as well of our concerns. As zoning administrator, I was reviewing the packet in preparation for this meeting and noticed the chain link fence request. And in our zoning ordinance in subsection 5A3C under the fence section, it states that coated chain link fences shall not be permitted in the front or street yard. And such is the case here with the frontage along, well, let me go to this one. Sorry, I'm not as good at this as Daphne is. So here's the property in question. And so front and street yard basically means if you have a corner property, then anything that's along the public right of way is considered street frontage. And so our code does have a sentence that for the standard zoning districts does not allow chain link fences. Now, this is zoned planned unit development. So there is some discretion here by commissioners to consider extenuating circumstances. The applicant today, and I'm just see if I have it. Oh, here, Mr. Williamson sent a communication with some photos illustrating current conditions and also saying that the reason they would like chain link is for a lower maintenance cost, as well as they want the taller height higher than 3 feet because of security concerns. So that's the update I have. And so the Parks and Rec Director and I both would prefer to see, instead of chain link fence, we prefer seeing some sort of a wooden product or a vinyl as opposed to chain link. We feel that would be more decorative. Happy to present anything that you on the screen that you wish.
And where does staff set as relative to the height of the fence?
So I think based on the precedent we have in the ordinance, long established precedent that anything between the building, rear facade and the lake along properties to the south, Middleton Beach Road, for example, we have had a longstanding language that this is limited to a height of 3 feet. That's been in our ordinance for decades. I don't remember the height of what's being replaced here. There was mainly a hedge, as I recall. I don't remember. Was there a fence here, Mr. Williamson? Did you mind if he
respond to that?
If you come up to the
Yep.
mic, if that's
Come up
okay
to the
with you.
microphone.
Good evening. My name's Michael Williamson. I'm a resident, but I'm also the distinguished chair of the Grounds and Landscaping Committee for the Century Harbor condos, which means I do most of the manual labor around there. So we're requesting this. The condos have been there for 53 years. They were built in 72. And for a long time, there's been a long hedgerow there that was planted with arborvitae. Some places as deep as 15 feet, some places as high as 7 feet. You may remember last year, the city came in and did a water main project on Lake Street. And that project, there's a right of way that runs right behind our condos, 20 feet from our patios. And so we had a construction site in the backyard last year with track hose, which my grandson really liked. He thought that was great that you could have a track hoe in your backyard.
I have some photos.
What's that?
I have some photos on this.
Oh, yeah. So what happened was the right of way went across there. They cut through the hedge. So we have one 13-foot gap, which I'm showing. This is a 26-foot gap. So we didn't really need a fence before because we had this hedgerow that no one would come across. And you can see where the trimming occurred on the hedgerow that was there in order for them to put the sidewalk in. So our hedge took quite a bit of a beating. We have a number of single women who live in the condos that are neighboring the street. And there's concern about people coming on. Ever since the construction occurred, we have people wandering onto the property, bringing their dogs. They think it's part of the city park because it's a big open expanse there. The board voted to put up a 5-foot chain link fence, which would help keep out people on the outside with a gate, and the gate would open in as staff has recommended. So that's what we're requesting. I will tell you that There's 60 feet of existing chain link fence that goes down to the lake right beside your park. That's been there for some time. Is 4 feet tall. There's a picture of it. So there's chain link fence that exists there already. So and I know because we're in a planned unit development, you folks have the flexibility to vary a little bit from what your normal zoning would be. And so we would make that request. We've tried to work with the city, both in terms of the park. We supported the park, and we supported the construction site that was for the right of way for the for the water line. And we think that's a public service, and we worked with the city on that as well. So we're asking for your approval tonight of a 5-foot chain link fence. And if that's not acceptable, we would request a 4-foot. And I did bring a prop along with me today. This is a 3-foot, called a yardstick. Now, if you think that's going to stop anybody from coming into our property, I don't think so. But a 4-foot would give it up to about here. So if you could find it in your hearts to do a 4-foot fence, we would appreciate that. We'd like a 5, but I can understand, but 3 seems like it's not going to provide much security for our residents. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mark, that photo that's on the screen right now, is that a property on the other side of the street?
That is our property. The green that you see is the no-mow grass that's been put in the park. The riprap that you see is the lake's edge. That is plantings that the city put in, the Parks Department put in between on the edge of our property and the city's property. And that is our property fence right behind that. And behind that is our property. And you can see one of our no trespassing signs that's on that fence. So there is a chain link fence that's there for part of it. We just didn't need it on the rest because we had the hedgerow, which got pierced by the construction project. And we're looking at a $9,000 expense now that we wouldn't have had to make had it not been for the water project.
Is that fence that you described, is that right about here? Did you see where I'm pointing, the southeast corner?
Yes, it's going right down there. And there's no hedgerow there, so that's why the fence was installed there to keep people. And I will tell you, our condo is on that side. I've seen people scale that fence that were fishing on the pier and got their lures hooked and jumped the fence and came over to get them off of the boat launches that are there. So I know they can scale for it. Listen, anything you build, they can get over. You're just trying to discourage most people.
Is the hedge that has been lopped off to make room for the sidewalk, is that all going to be removed, or is that going to be remain and hopefully regrow a little bit?
We want to keep that there as
Okay.
part of a screening
Mhm.
to the street.
And the fence then would be installed behind the hedge?
It would be on the property line,
Yep.
yes, between the hedge and the street. So we would, the property line is, they used all of their right of way
Mhm.
to come over for the expansion of the repaving of Lake Street. So pretty much the sidewalk is there and then the property line is right there. So we would
and-
set back from that.
Yeah, and that hedge you said, and I actually drove down there earlier today just to kind of take a look, and it's fairly tall.
Yeah.
So if you put the 4-foot chain link fence, for the most part, that hedge is going to mask that. Is that correct? An accurate statement? Except for where you have the gaps?
It will be, except
Okay.
for the gaps.
Okay.
And so, yes, and there are a couple of other smaller gaps because of the trimming that killed the hedge. So even though they didn't take the hedge out, in effect, it did kill parts of the hedge there.
So just to make sure I understand, you're proposing the fence be between the condo buildings and the hedge. Is that right?
Now, we're talking about the fence would be between the hedge and the sidewalk.
Okay,
Oh, the hedge would be,
yes.
okay.
So would you be open to, instead of a chain link fence, having a wood fence?
Well, we're not a very wealthy condo association, and since you're looking at most of the maintenance crew that maintains this, we're trying to get a low maintenance fence that we don't have to come back and paint or stain
You should never
periodically.
paint any wood outside.
What's that?
You should never paint any wood outside.
Listen, I'm a firm believer in that, but still, if you put a cedar fence up, it ain't gonna last that long unless it's treated with something, if it's stained or something. So, you know, we gotta have a fence. That's the question. We prefer to have a chain link fence because it's quite frankly $2,000 cheaper than a wood fence, and it's $3,000 cheaper than a vinyl fence. And we're already paying $9,000 for the chain link fence.
No, I'd feel differently if the chain link was on the other side of the
Shrubs.
the shrubs, because then the reason that the chain link is not acceptable to city standards is just because of the visual impact it makes.
Mhm.
So if it was placed on the other side, I think for the most part, it would be screened and wouldn't be objectionable.
Yeah.
Well, it would be on the, if I understand what you're saying, is the fence would be on the inside of the shrub row going
Correct,
down.
correct. You're-
Right.
You're not losing any property or usable space, if I understand correctly, because you got the fence would be up against the shrubbery.
Right, right,
Really, the only thing you'd lose is the area where the gaps are right now, right?
Yeah,
right.
that's right, yeah.
So, I mean, and that's, I don't know how many square feet that actually is, but is it really usable? And you know, you're gonna have a gate in there at some
Yes,
point too.
there'll be a gate. Did you see the cuts that were made on the shrubbery when you were over there today?
That's why I asked if
I
those are
think a
gonna
fence
remain
might
or-
be preferable to looking at that because that's arborvitae and it does not grow back.
Well, and then I think to the point of the city's perspective, a wooden fence would mask a lot of the,
Yeah.
a lot of that cut.
Yeah.
Whereas a chain link fence, the public gets to see that cut foliage.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Doesn't
Well, and I
shade.
think you have specifications in the zoning ordinance about the type of fencing you allow also, don't you, Mark? I think that's the case.
Mainly that we don't allow chain link fence. So,
I heard that already.
sorry.
That's okay.
We do have some specifications in terms of height, if that's what you're getting at, materials. There is some general information there.
Yeah.
Naturally resistant or treated wood, brick or masonry, natural stone, etc.
Decorative sides must face out.
Yep.
So I really don't have the authority to answer you on that because of the board took the vote and they sent me down here. So how about if you could maybe have a motion that would approve a chain link fence behind the piece or a wooden fence next to the sidewalk, and that'd give me a choice or a vinyl. I mean, it could go with vinyl, but a more decorative fence. And then the board could move in either direction.
Mark, if we were to propose this, such a motion where we had a chain link fence on the inside, is that going to set a precedent in your mind for future chain link fences that you're gonna have a problem with or city's gonna have a problem with?
I think the setback helps in this situation because you're bringing that away from the right of way and there's some landscaping in front of it. The concern I would have is that we have this photo actually is a really great photo of what it looks like. And that is not going to grow back anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
It's my understanding from the city engineer, the former city engineer, that there was the option given to the neighborhood, to the association to remove all the hedges as part of the project, but that was something they declined. So as a result, that's why this cut happened. My understanding is the cut happened, where the property line is. It wasn't going on to the neighboring property, although it looks like you agree with that. So it's just from an aesthetic standpoint, this obviously isn't great. So I think the idea that you have and what Mr. Williamson is outlining, I think that makes sense to have screening on this side of the fence that is a more attractive fence. And then if there's going to be a chain link fence, then that would be on the other side. But the effect of that is on the inside of the property, I should say. But the effect of that is then we are going to have this type of appearance in perpetuity. Well, not perpetuity, but for the time being. And I'll just add that the reason why we have this regulation is to protect sightlines to the lake for adjoining properties. I mean, that's the thinking behind it. In this case, because of the angle of how the lake is oriented in relation to Lake Street, there obviously is not, if you're walking down the sidewalk and looking left, you're not really seeing the lake because of the shoreline. So really what a taller fence accomplishes here is it blocks some of the sight line of the lake for the condo residents. But also a taller fence creates more of a wall feeling along the sidewalk, which is not ideal. And our zoning ordinance as written now does not, it does not allow these taller fence structures along right of ways anymore. So in that sense, Commissioner Bruce, you're asking about precedent.
Yeah.
We have a lot of these examples in the city where we have solid fences along sidewalks. The new zoning ordinance does not allow that anymore. So it's kind of I'm giving you a vague answer, but
Mhm.
there's obviously some circumstances here that are extenuating.
I'm going to make a motion to approve a 3-foot tall fence as an SIP modification contingent upon ensuring that the gate opens along the new sidewalk on Lake Street and not directly onto the park, and that the fence be of wood or vinyl construction, not chain link.
I'll second that motion.
I'll display the motion in a moment. So you said a wood or vinyl fence.
Decorative.
So if I can, well, here, let me get the motion on the screen.
So Commissioner, would you just consider a 4-foot fence as opposed to a 3? You know, it is in planned unit development, so you do have that ability to have a variation. It'd make a big difference for us.
I don't know if I can answer that right now. We're in the middle of this.
Is that what you were
You
getting
can,
at?
yeah, you can always amend the motion.
Does that capture what you said, Commissioner Bruce?
Yes, that does capture.
And who seconded it? Was that Sean? Okay, thank you.
So there's been a request by the applicant to increase the height of the fence to 4 feet from 3. So I open that up for discussion, I guess.
I mean, I think I understand the applicant's desire. At 3 foot, I would agree. It's pretty darn easy to basically sit on the fence and swing your legs over it. A 4 foot would not allow that. Also 4 foot for many people wouldn't obstruct the view. Or not in a real significant way. So I would be open to expanding it to 4 feet.
And I would agree with that statement as well. Also, a 4-foot wooden fence is a lot more challenging to climb than a 4-foot chain link fence.
Yes.
So it actually, in many ways, even provide you with a little bit even more security because it's a lot, I mean, you still can scale it, but a little bit more challenging for people who are not not fit enough to do so. So I would agree with the 4-foot. I'm okay with 4-foot fence.
And 4 foot would match the existing height of the other chain link fence.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I'll amend the motion then to approve a 4-foot tall fence with the motion to remain as written.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, so I'll fix this later. Okay,
Do we have a second for the amended motion?
Yes.
Sure. Been motioned in and seconded. Any further discussion?
so this is a vote on the amendment or is this a substitute motion? Which are we doing?
It was meant to be a substitute motion.
Okay. That way you only have to vote once.
Thanks. All right, now we will call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Commissioners, thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Just really quickly, it's around 7:30 PM and I just wanted to make sure that our commissioners know that we need to wrap this meeting up at 8:45 this evening because we are going to lose our quorum at 8:45. So
Okay.
just time check.
Thank you. Moving on to the second agenda item, the specific implementation plan for Valvoline Instant Oil Change 2209 Deming Way. We will start with staff commentary.
Daphne prepared the staff report for this agenda item. This proposal is located within the airport, the Discovery Springs PUD area. This is a specific implementation plan for the remaining site along Deming Way that has not yet developed. Automobile-related uses are approved within this PDD area, meaning what is being proposed here is not modifying the existing zoning. It's simply the SIP for a new building. And Daphne is recommending that Plan Commission accept the criteria for approval prepared by staff within her memo with a list of 6 conditions. And I believe we do have applicants here in case there are any questions.
I have a question. This is in building one, I think one of the few ones that have a basement level in this area. This being some of the lowest land we have in the city and something that certainly the 2018 would have completely swamped out and then some. And my big concern is we're going to have storage of oil and other toxic chemicals in an area that has had problems in the past, and how is this going to be addressed?
Does anyone from the applicant team want to respond to that question?
Hi, Jeff Brinkus with GBA Architecture, 2248 Deming Way. We are very familiar with this area as our office is one of those that do have an 18-inch sunken area that did flood in 2018. And our landlord is Livesey. So we've taken that into consideration for this building, and we are designing the footings foundation accordingly in consideration for all of Commissioner Shaw, what you've pointed out. So we are taking measures and steps so that that doesn't happen. Definitely the landlord nor the tenant want that to be what happened in 2018. So
what sort of steps are you taking to ensure that you're not going to get flooding in the maintenance pits?
we are doing extensive waterproofing around the foundation walls. Some of that stuff probably wasn't done to that extent on some of these other buildings. We're raising the building up a little bit higher than Bruce from D'Onofrio is here as well, so you can kind of speak to that. We're raising up a little bit from those flood levels so that some of that stuff that did happen back in 18 don't happen again. So we've kind of mitigated some of those parts too.
Could we hear from D'Onofrio and just kind of explain a little bit more about how that will work?
Good evening, Bruce Holler with D'Onofrio Kotkin Associates. So the elevation that we set for the building in 921.5, I believe. I don't know off the top of my head, but that's a couple feet above the elevation of the greenway that went through, and during the 100-year event, theoretically the 100-year event was contained within the greenway, but obviously that was a larger event that happened in 2018. I believe most of the product that is generated in this lower level is contained within barrels. So I don't know that there's any open waste oil. And I'd like to, I don't know for sure because I don't understand the containment process. But it's my understanding that the waste oil will be contained. And, you know, hopefully when hopefully that's taken into account when, you know, if it were a large rain were to come, that, you know, the bulk of the waste is, you know, sealed up.
So you're right now, your first floor is a couple feet above the 100-year flood event.
Yes.
Mark, has staff reviewed this proposal? Engineering staff reviewed it?
Did engineering staff review it? I'm sure they
Yes.
did, but I don't know the details of their
Yeah.
review. I mean, typically we put in the packet the staff reviewed comments and they are here, so.
Okay. Uh, Have your concerns been addressed, do you believe?
No. I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong. I just didn't hear anything very concrete. Sorry, Bruce. I mean, if you can tell me that, yes, they have storage for all the oil that is up above floor level and waste oil that is gathered down below is very quickly transported back up, then okay, I can go along with that, but you haven't had this addressed in your conversations, doesn't sound like. So I don't feel comfortable yet. We being a very large, we have had many problems with things that have been unanticipated in the past. And this one is something that can be anticipated. And I sure as heck don't want to run into a situation where I think I added to some bad situation. So if you can get us some information that would indicate that things are better protected. I don't have a problem with the general concept. It's just what it is, where it is.
So that's it's just making sure that the
Yes.
contaminants are sealed up or there's the process
To get it up to
place
the
to get
first
it up to
floor
the
and
upper level.
quickly, yes.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know how much oil is stored or how much is gathered, but it's oil that's going to go directly into some sensitive areas. And I don't like that idea.
Could we add a condition of approval, do you think?
Yeah,
I'll let you think about that condition for a minute, and I'm gonna make a motion to accept the criteria for approval prepared by staff and grant approval of the specific implementation plan upon satisfaction of the following conditions 1 through 6 as listed in the staff report and shown here, along with an additional condition to address concerns regarding potential contamination due to floodwaters entering the building.
yeah, I think if city engineer, including the water management folks, can take a look at this and feel assured that the waste oil or any other oil or other lubricants that can be polluting can be or satisfactorily addressed, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, we'll be attending the Water Resource Committee meeting in June, at their June meeting, so.
I plan to see you there.
All right.
All right, we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
Adams a second.
Any further discussion?
Is number 7 capture what you intended?
How's that look to you?
In to make engineers, just add an S to.
And add an S, we have one city engineer.
Oh, okay, then. We'll call it good.
All right, no further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Third on the agenda, we have the site plan review for Castle Rock redevelopment, 6404 to 6418 University Avenue and 2009 Lakeview Avenue. Starting with staff commentary.
So this is before you tonight because I'm trying to get the right scale here. There we go. Every time the few times I've done this, I admire Daphne more and more for her ability. She's going to be great at this. So one of the concerns raised about this project was that came up during my review of this was the setback. We unfortunately have a right of way along University Avenue that varies, that jogs in and out. And so I talked with the applicant about this, and they're aware of this first condition of if you were to, I think I'm jumping the gun here, but I'm just flagging for you what one of the concerns was from the staff report. That was the primary one that was raised. Otherwise, I will just, I think the staff report speaks for itself. I'll turn it over to the commission in the interest of time, just to have you ask any questions that you have. And the applicants are here to respond as well. Jumping around again. So it's this site here that we're adding, the MUA is being added to the project that was previously approved.
Any questions for the applicant?
I just wanted to express, I think this solution's is a really good one. The way to add some more housing there, to create access through the other building, adjacent building. We're really getting very efficient land use, and I think that part's great. I like the exterior design. I think it's going to be attractive. There were just a couple comments that I had. One that Mark brought up in the staff, or a couple that Mark brought up in the staff report, having to do with the pedestrian entrance on University Avenue for the smaller building B. I think that's important, that we get a pedestrian entrance there. Otherwise, it looks really as if it can't be entered and exited. I understand that there's a way to get into it through the parking area, but I don't think that's what our zoning code was intending. I think there's a modification that can be made to the plan, and that you'd be able to create an entrance on the west edge of that facade that's facing University Avenue. And I would encourage the commission to adopt that. Other than that, I didn't have anything else to ask the applicant other than maybe the city staff. The landscaping plans looks pretty intense and pretty nice, but I don't see anything in the street terrace itself in terms of treescape. Is that city's responsibility? And
Yeah, so are you bringing this up because the terrace is so wide?
well, the terrace is quite wide there,
Right.
yeah. And between the sidewalk, I mean, between the sidewalk and the curb itself, right?
Yeah, so that normally the Public Works Department's position is that is kept as grass. Anybody who, if an adjoining property owner wants to install more, other type of plantings within certain parameters, it's still at risk of being altered by, if there's a need to do utility maintenance or what have you. So as a general rule of thumb, I'm not aware of applicants in this case that do anything but grass in the terrace. So that certainly isn't a requirement we have or that we can impose.
But
Am I
does it,
misunderstanding your?
yeah, does the city not have a treescape plan that they implement?
Oh, I see what you're getting at. So we plant street trees.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's our city forester has a list of trees that they will use to place in the corridor where utilities allow. But that's not something that we reviewed as part of this project, but I think that's a good suggestion. I can't speak for the forester.
Yeah, so I just would bring it up. I don't know if it's really a condition of approval, but I would ask that staff follow up and with appropriate city staff and departments to implement on street terrace plantings along that area.
I don't remember what page the landscaping was on. There we go. You're talking about this area, Commissioner Bruce?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We will, there are concerns about the types of trees that are planted here, or the fact that there are trees planted here, because there's a clay utility line that, so I think they have that in the, as a contingency of approval. Making sure that we don't have a tree in the future puncturing a clay line.
Mhm.
But other than that, we didn't have any concerns about the landscaping plan. I appreciated that there was an effort made to screen the base, the foundation of the building on the north side, because speaking to building height, you know, this is a very prominent facade facing the neighbors to the north. And that facade is exposed by at the garage level.
Mhm.
And so anything they can do to soften that, the lower, I'll call it 10 feet, 11 feet, is obviously welcome. And this is a good example of why we consider this to be part of the building height, because it's, you know, quite.
This will be quite the change for them.
Right. I'll show you. There it is. The upper image.
I ask the applicant a question. You may have to go up to the microphone, I think. On this north elevation that's on the screen now, was there any consideration of moving the red brick treatment down to the basement level on building B portion so that you had a more similar, you know, architectural treatment to building A? And I thought it also might bring some interest to that basement level facade to have a different material change there.
Yeah, I think the consideration, I guess I'll state again, Jeff Prinkis with GBA Architecture. The consideration was kind of to mimic what we did on building A. So kind of that line with that stone veneer at the base just continued on, and we kind of just took that building, and as it came down University, we kind of just stepped it down accordingly. You know, I will point out, I mean, you've already mentioned the extensive landscaping along that north side. We also have a 6-foot fence that does screen the neighbors as well. So I'm not going to say that they won't be able to see much of that area, but the likelihood of them even seeing any of it is probably pretty minimal, just with the landscaping and the fence. So, I mean, our preference would be to kind of keep the stone veneer as we had it, because I think it is kind of in keeping with building A and how we articulated that. But appreciate the comment, Commissioner Bruce. And if I could maybe just address the, Mark, if you don't mind going to the kind of the floor plan of first floor, that that entrance, off of the parking, to building B.
Oh, that's the bottom level, sorry.
Yeah, we'll take a look at how we could do that. I mean, we do have a vestibule there. I do acknowledge that it does, you would come off of the sidewalk and enter through the parking lot. We're pretty tight with our parking and adding those stalls. So anything that we might do to potentially get a sidewalk kind of along that west parking field there will likely, I mean, I don't think it'd even be possible just because we don't have any extra space there. So, I guess
I guess what I was thinking in my mind was that the unit, is it B104, that plan would be adjusted for an access point right on that facade there. That maybe that becomes a studio unit rather than a 1-bedroom. And hopefully you could recoup some of that space because you wouldn't need the corridor adjacent to B107. In other words, if there's a way just to take that entry and move it from the side into the parking area to the front where University Avenue is. I acknowledge that there's going to be a change there in plan, but I think it is important for us to require us to have some pedestrian entrances on the street face.
This is the access to the elevator here, right, where I'm leaning?
Yeah.
Is this the access?
Correct,
So this is the main corridor,
Mhm.
is I think Commissioner Bruce, that's your point, right?
Yeah.
So getting.
Looks like grades would probably work.
So that would in essence, one of the reasons why we're up there, is due to, that accessible parking stall as well.
Mhm.
Because that's our accessible entrance, so
Can
great.
can you move that accessible stall to the University Avenue frontage? Come in off the city sidewalk up to the,
Potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's worth exploring and seeing how we can manage that with the plan.
I'll make a motion for approval of the site plan review effective upon fulfillment of of the conditions listed on page 2 of the staff report. And including a condition that primary building entrance, pedestrian entrance be provided facing University Avenue directly.
Adams will second the motion.
So you're not saying to remove the existing access point necessarily, you're just saying you're introducing an access point.
I'm introducing an access point. They can remove the other one. That's fine. But it's not a requirement.
Do you need to see that typed in here, or are we good with that? In the end,
I'm good
it's
with
pretty
it.
straightforward, so, okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
And they're okay with waiving number 10, exterior design standard? Oh, that's the one you're not waiving, so you're replacing,
Yeah, that's right. Actually, that's right.
so you're basically changing this to, okay, got it.
Thank you.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. On to item 4 of the agenda. We have the concept review of land use changes and forthcoming rezoning requests for the community of Bishop's Bay.
Yes, and we have Jake Buns here from T-Wall, who is available to answer questions about this proposal. Over the course of around the last year, we have seen a few different iterations of some changes that are going to be proposed for the community of Bishop's Bay neighborhood on the northeast side of the city. What the most recent action that happened with this proposal is the Common Council was presented with 2 different considerations for what will be forthcoming as a proposed boundary adjustment. And at a meeting in April of this year, the council endorsed an option for a future boundary line between Westport and the city of Middleton. And so that is shown on page 1 of the staff report, which Mark has up on the screen. At that meeting, there were also implied land uses changes that would be forthcoming and that would require a zoning ordinance amendment because this property is zoned planned development district and the general implementation plan or general development plan changes that are being proposed are pretty substantial changes and would need to go through a formal zoning ordinance amendment. So the city offers concept review for larger changes like this in order for an applicant to get feedback on a proposal prior to going through the additional steps to flesh it out through a more formalized plan. And we don't really have very well-defined criteria for what type of information is required for submitting for concept review. And so this submittal, it's relatively thin on the details of what is being proposed. I prepared a minimal staff report to address the understanding that we have in the changes. I want to share some major concerns that our staff has about these changes, which we've discussed with the applicant over the course of several meetings over the last year. We have language within our comprehensive plan that talks about how we want to see a range of housing types throughout the community. And what is being proposed would substantially change what currently exists under the zoning and provides a range of housing types. And it would instead consolidate all of the remaining housing units within this community to 4-story apartment buildings. And it would be 61 of those, as well as a lesser number of mixed-use buildings and 1 large senior housing complex. And then the other land use category would be single-family homes, but only under 1 type of zoning category, which is the most compact, which is the cottage residential lots. So there are a number of steps that this property would need to go through. I mentioned the rezoning. There would need to be an update to the utility study. There would need to be an update to the traffic impact analysis. And so I think that what T-Wall is asking for is they would like to hear some feedback from the Plan Commission before they go through some of those additional steps, which obviously would result in significant additional cost. I mentioned our major concerns is rather than having a range of housing types, we would be consolidating into a substantial number of apartment units. Our staff team, in discussing this, we really can't think of any other area in Dane County that would have this level of consolidation of multifamily buildings, and then also just the major decrease in the number of single-family homes. But with all of that being said, we didn't really have numbers to put to this proposal because we wanted to see a table that would show what the current zoning allows, how many units under each type of housing, how much commercial land there is under the current zoning, which public lands fall under the current zoning, and how many acres of parkland there are. And then in the proposal, the flip side of that, what are we going to have under the new zoning classification? And I do think that those things are kind of going to be the bare minimum that we need to provide feedback on this concept. But I want to give the Plan Commission an opportunity to provide feedback and ask questions of Jake Bunce, who is here.
Jake, do you want to make a presentation?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Jake Bunce, 1818 Park Street. So the plan is a lot to digest, obviously, just because it's I think the whole community of Bishop's Bay is like 700 acres. So, and Abby gave a good overview. We just, before we proceed with rewriting the MDP, performing a utility study, performing a traffic impact analysis, and spending the money to do so, we just want to get some feedback from the commissioners and on what ideas you guys have, or what you guys want to see here, and what you would be comfortable approving, so that we can just go through this process one time. But yeah, so basically we just want to update the general development plan for the entire community of Bishop's Bay. Mark, if you go to the other page. So that map that's shown right now is the town, just a zoomed in of town center, the
general.
yeah, general development plan. Yeah, so that's the updated general development plan that we're proposing. The two, I guess, I wouldn't say wrestling thoughts, but the two different municipalities that we're dealing with, Middleton and Westport, are looking for two separate kinds of housing and land uses. So Westport obviously, or not obviously, as you may not know, Westport really wants larger lots, less density, a more rural feel, whereas our understanding is that Middleton is obviously in need of housing, but is looking for a little bit more density, mix of single family, mixed use, multifamily, commercial uses, etc. So you can see on the dark red line that runs through the site, that's our proposed corporate boundary line that you guys have seen before. But everything to the right of that is Westport, in the farm, the prairie estates, the woods neighborhoods. And then everything to the left of that line is in Middleton. So the Reserve Hill neighborhood, Town Center neighborhood, Watermark neighborhood, and then the back nine. For those of you that don't know, the back nine, the woods, if you're following along on the map, you can see the neighborhood names. The back nine, the woods, part of the prairie, and the prairie estates, and the part of the farm, have all been built. So it's mostly the north half of this plan that has yet to be constructed. So as you can see, like I mentioned before, the Westport side of this, the right side of the screen, is larger lots, about on average, probably half-acre lots, lower density. And the north and left and west side of the screen is where there's a variety of uses. So that orange color is multifamily uses, whether that's senior living or apartments. The green color is a neighborhood civic use, so like Solas are already existing, but that's a natural burial cemetery. There's a site for a church and a school. There's another site for a school. So that's a neighborhood civic use. The red area is a commerce use, or commerce zoning. So that would be what we have planned there in the town center, for example, is a grocery store, convenience stores, coffee shops. Let's see. some retail shops, but those are some different retail shops, maybe a bank, other commercial uses. We have hotels planned in the commerce area, offices planned in the commerce area. And then that light tan color where it says town center, that's like the heart of the town center. So those are all mixed use buildings where it's first floor retail. I kind of compare it to Hilldale, except if you were to add apartments on 2 or 3 story, 2, 3, 4 stories above that. So first floor retail and apartments above, and that would be like the central community engagement space for the Bishops Bay, the overall Bishops Bay neighborhood. So it'd be restaurants, shops, etc. The Reserve Hill neighborhood, as you can see, that's where that was kind of where we were jogging the corporate boundary line around. That's a much more dense neighborhood. Think like Viridian or even Encore style homes. I think it's 333 lots in there. So that's yeah, just a different type of housing than what's been built already or is proposed elsewhere. Mark, if you go to the other sheet.
This one?
Yeah. So this is the town center. So this is applicable, very applicable to you guys because this is all in Middleton. And this actually encompasses the town center and the watermark neighborhoods. But this would be just if you were to zoom in on that area of the map, which is the corner of Q and Onken and the northwest corner of Community of Bishops Bay. This is what we'd be proposing. So that dark red area, the dark red buildings, that would be like your main street that I was talking about before, mixed use buildings. All the yellow buildings are multifamily. The pinkish reddish buildings are those commerce uses, grocery stores. And then blue is, dental office, healthcare office, hotels, offices, etc. But I think, check my notes if I missed anything. I think to Abby's point of wanting some more details on what we're proposing versus what's changing. I saw that memo this afternoon, so I threw together a board to show you guys, and it's as accurate as I can make it. It's not as detailed as I would like it to be because it just, commercial. I'll just pull it up, but. Like, for example, commercial square footages, I don't have broken out by each individual use. I just have commercial square footages, but what you guys can see here. Is this top bar right here is what's proposed. This is what's currently approved, excuse me. And then this bottom bar is the difference. And please also take this just for our reference today, because I want to have a sit down with Mark and or Abby and get the current approved GDP numbers ironed out, only because the MDP says one thing, the master utilities study says another thing. So it really varies on how, what the actual numbers are. But you can see, like was mentioned earlier, there is so the difference is down here. Overall, from the current approved GDP, there is a reduction in the single family units of 259 lots. There's an increase in multifamily units of almost 2,000 units. Senior multifamily is just a separate category. I don't think we really accounted for that in the current approved GDP. So that's an increase in almost 1,900 total units, total living units in the whole community of Bishops Bay. And then as far as commercial square footage goes, we're proposing 575,000 commercial square feet approximately, which is an increase of 125,000 commercial square feet in the greater area. So, and I can't speak to how the area was planned back in 2015 or 2014 when it was done. But, as we're kind of going through this revamp of the general development plan, I obviously just looking at this numbers see that there's a lot more potential for the land. And I'm not saying that it has to be, this much added multifamily or that much more commercial square footage. But it just seems to me, looking at the old plan, that there was probably a lot less density, a lot less need for housing at the time, was what I imagine. And so we just kind of want to use this as a starting point and get feedback from you guys on how to move forward. Yeah.
Because I can't see the numbers very well, can you also go over the parkland numbers on the right hand side
Yeah.
of that?
Yeah, sorry. I haven't put in our parkland numbers because I just don't have those acreages yet, but I will. No, I read your memo this afternoon, so I will get those from our engineers. But the current approved GDP from what I read in the MDP document were 95 public parkland acres and 96 private parkland acres. But like I said, I kind of want to go over that with you, Abby, because the numbers are all over the map, and there's about 20 different versions that I can go off of. So,
And just to point out that parkland dedication is, the requirements are based on the number of units. So if you're increasing the number of housing units by 1,900, that would result in additional parkland requirements.
that's a good point.
So I'm just looking at this right now, you know, you've heard me say a lot, we need a variety of housing in our community and in the county. This section does not have that variety of housing. Okay, I know the reserved hill is the smaller lots, like you said, the Viridian size lots. I'm just looking at this as, you know, what would be the eastern portion, you know, east of that pond. A lot of units, a lot of concrete. You know, surface parking, from what I can see. If any place in this map that you're showing would be suitable, in my opinion, for single family homes, that's the area I would probably recommend doing so. You know, reduction of 259 single family lots, you're approaching 50% reduction. You know, you're on pace to have over 600, when you include the reserve hill, with 330 and you're reducing it by 259, you know, we could have over 600 new homes, you know, purchasable homes in our community if everything stayed the same. And now we're down to 330. I don't see that as making positive progress on the cost of single family homes ever skyrocketing, you know, just skyrocketing in our county. So again, I'm aware that housing prices are not going to come down, but if we could slow the rate that they increase, that would benefit people who are hoping to buy a home in our community. You know, if you look at the housing market of single family homes right now in Middleton, I have not looked at it within the last couple of weeks, but at any given moment, there are 2 or 3 homes under $500,000 for in our community. Okay. Not many. Was it?
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky. And I can't think of, you know, I'm using my own experiences in my own experience. I understand that everybody's got a different experience. I bought my house when I was 28 years old. How can a 28-year-old buy a house right now unless they got a really good job right out of college, you know, somewhere? It's just not, that's just not happening right now. And a lot of people then are forced to rent, you know, and that's one part of the reason why you start to see the skyrocketing rents too. I mean, we just also didn't build houses anywhere in this country for, you know, 15 years after the housing crisis. But I don't know, I'm just not seeing, I need to see more of an effort made by all developers of creating a diverse housing stock, which does include multifamily. It does include, you know, smaller lots, it includes medium lots as well, just so we can have mobility as in the housing market too. You know, we need to have, people are sitting on houses right now if they, largely because they have a great interest rate, but because they have nothing else to buy, right? So, you know, if you can have that upward mobility, like you have a small house, you move into a bigger house, creates an entry for somebody else to buy a house. That's why we need to have the diversity of housing stock purchasable housing stock, one of the many reasons, but I look at this and like, this doesn't scream community to me. Not that apartments can't have community, but people who rent also are very transient. I'm not sure how often people who rent move, but from people I know who do rent, it's about every 2 to 3 years because rent keeps going up. And a lot of people are like, I want to buy a house because I'll know how much my housing is going to be every month and year to year to year. So I would like to see an effort made to continue to really grow our purchasable housing stock while taking also into account we do need to have a greater variety.
Yeah, no, all those are really good points and taken. I agree with a lot of what you said, Nick. I just want to make sure that the community of Bristol Bay is a large developable area, but I don't want to. Obviously, we're amending this GDP, but I don't want to just us be focused in on just the community of Bristol Bay. I want to take we got to look at the greater Middleton. So, there are developers who are better suited at developing those small and medium-sized lots that are doing so in Red Tail Ridge and the Viridian one that's going up. And I can't remember the name. Pheasant Crossing. That's right. So there's a reason that, the plan is the way it is because this is what we're good at doing and we're the developers of this site. But I agree with everything you had to say. So
it also, I'm looking at the right-hand side here with all these apartment buildings just clumped together. And I would like to see some open space and parkland. I didn't see anything. There's some areas here that might be parkland, but I don't see how they would work well. No ready access, nothing scoped out in terms of parking areas so that general public can get to it. I think there needs to be, you said 95, and again, we haven't really scoped this out in terms of what the parkland requirements would be. But I think you're going to need to have a lot more parkland in here and would make it a lot more livable to have parks and trails in these areas. And I understand this is very highly conceptual, but I just think there needs to be a little bit more broken up. These apartments just go on and on. And again, if you inject some single family homes in there, I think that would help that a lot too.
those are all good points as well. I will point out, and it's not on this map, but if you went to the other one, and this was in the plans from the original Bishop Bay GDP, but it's the Woodland Adventure Park. So I don't know the size of it exactly, but it's that large. Yeah, Mark's Coast. So it's a huge, vast parkland in the center. But I completely agree. I think walking trails, making a livable community, adding more open space is a good idea.
But being able to get out of your apartment and walk over to a park, especially when you've got that many, how many dwelling units?
61 buildings.
Yeah, there's a
3,200 apartments.
3,200 apartments. You can do better.
I think, Jake, I think if you guys are rethinking the master plan here, personally, I would be supportive with some increase in density. I don't know what that means. By some, I don't know where you started, but I think you're right that generally land is more valuable now than it was 15 years ago, and we only have so much left. But I don't think approaching it with kind of these siloed uses where you've got the cottage homes all siloed together and then the apartments kind of all siloed together. I think having a really interesting mix of housing types, and absolutely we need more single family than what's shown here. But it'd also be nice to see some townhomes and some other missing middle housing as well. You really have an opportunity, and I hope you take advantage of it to do something that's going to be, an impressive development for Middleton and Westport both. I drove through Red Tail Ridge last week and was really impressed with how that's turning out. It looks great, I think. And it was a good plan. There has a mix of housing types and sizes and lot sizes, and I think something along those lines. And I think you can even improve on that. Obviously, you've got the resources to do something quite fantastic. I'd really hope to see something stronger and more diverse the next go around.
Thanks for the feedback.
And I concept level, like maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but I look at this and I see a lot of impervious surface. And I don't know if that can be dealt with. Underground parking gets to be expensive. I understand that. We're trying to keep rents in check. But there's just a lot there of hard surface. And we're constantly trying to get more infiltration and less area to spread salt out of parking lots.
May I ask a question? Have you considered, since T-Wall doesn't, you mentioned you don't do some of the smaller lots, have you considered partnering with another developer that can deliver some of the diversity in housing stock?
Yes, we've talked about it.
Because I know you like to build apartments and then manage them.
Yeah. Yeah, we've talked about it. I'll leave it at that. I don't want to divulge too much into it, but yeah, you lose a lot of control that way, and we want to create. You guys have all been through the community of Bishop's Bay. It's very nice. It's very, the landscaping's nice, the signage is nice, the houses are all well maintained, and we don't want to lose, the control of keeping the whole community very nice and very beautiful. But yes, we've talked about it, Mark. So it's definitely in the realm of opportunities for those areas.
Being mindful of the time with 2 agenda items left, were there any further comments for concept review?
It would be good to come back when we have a full commission as well.
Yes.
Obviously, we got a light commission here.
How many are there normally?
7.
So, yeah. No, I appreciate the feedback, and I'll take this to the team, and yeah, we'll take a look at it and see what we can do and get it back in front of you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jake.
Jake, can you send me a copy of what you showed tonight? Because we should probably append that to the minutes.
Yeah. And yes, and please go through it. You can help me out a little bit on the approved stuff.
Thank you.
No motion needed. So moving on to agenda item 5, the revisions to zoning ordinance, chapter 10 of the municipal code.
I thought I would start with just the list of changes that are listed in the public hearing notice, highlighting in particular in yellow the changes to which we've made since the public hearing held in April. You'll notice in particular the indoor sales or service as a conditional use. That was part of the testimony that you got, or the statements you received today. And I'm not going to go through all these now, but I just wanted to highlight that. And of course, then there's the building height issue. What I did want to say is that this is the first I heard today that Mr. Connors has lingering concerns about the revisions made to our building height definition, even though we published this a few weeks ago. So I guess one option would be for the commission to strike any changes to the building height definition and established grade and just go with the rest of the ordinance and leave the building height alone and leave that for a future revision. I mean, that would be another option today. Because I will share with you that there are people, including a conversation I had today, who are hoping for passage of the zoning ordinance revisions as it relates to fence standards. as it relates to the research park zoning. We have various other changes that we're making that are not a source of contention. So that is something I would point out respectfully as an option as well.
Another option would be pass it as it is and then
Sure.
revisit the building height in the future
Right.
as well.
Can I ask a question, Mark?
Sure.
Would another option be delaying to an addition to a future meeting, or is that not an option because it would require an additional public hearing if we were to change the building height definition?
My view is that any changes you make to the building height definition are within the purview. You could make changes to this definition tonight as long as it's within the boundaries of what has been noticed previously. I think obviously there's been a range of options discussed. And if you wanted to edit or work on this definition some more, that's fine. If you introduce new concepts, which is why we had the second hearing tonight. If you introduce new concepts, then that is what delays the ordinance. Abby, I'm trying to understand, see if I'm answering your question. So, there are ways to address the building height concerns and make changes without having another hearing, in my view, because it's
Okay.
been noticed.
I guess I would just to add to Mark mentioned that there are some people who are waiting for clarification on fences and research park. There are also people who are waiting on clarification on the building height. So I would be very concerned about delaying that portion and having to hold another public hearing if we can avoid it.
Understood. Understood, but if you don't have resolution on building height tonight, then it's delayed anyway.
But only to one future meeting potentially, right?
Well,
Okay.
we've been working at this since last summer, so.
Right. I just would hate I would recommend against moving the code forward without addressing the building height issue, because that is a factor that we have discussed with applicants many times over the course. In fact, I would say it's probably the number one issue that has been discussed with people who are waiting on.
And Abby, I support your position, and I think, we've made a lot of progress in my view. If you went along with the suggestion to not make any changes to the building height, you would be left with the scenario of then you measure building height based on every facade we have, north, south, east, and west, and just go based on that facade. And that obviously has not been working. Whereas this, we know, is addressing a lot of the concerns we have. So if there's a need to further tinker with the ordinance, that can be done. As I've said before, I think we've made a lot of progress. I do want to say that where this language came from, the 15% in particular, is Madison's ordinance. And the other point I wanted to make, and we should maybe look at the drawing, is that just because this drawing shows, I forgot, I didn't write it down where it is. Is that towards the end? I think it is. This is the sign ordinance. Did I put it? do
It
you
was
know
in
if
a
I put it
separate
front?
It's a
document.
it's a separate.
Yeah, I know it's a separate document, but I have it all compiled. I can't remember if I
Oh.
put it in front of or the back.
Sorry.
But I'm looking at the front.
Have we had other input other than Mr. Connors here as to the 15%?
Here it is. We've had a couple other questions from developers. What I wanted to say about this is that this drawing is meant to show a building envelope. This doesn't mean you have to design a building that's 60 feet high in the front and then have this lopped off by 9 feet. You could have obviously you could have a front facade of 56 feet. And, this is just an envelope. This is not meant to be a design of a building. And again, we're trying to address a lot of concerns we've had from residents that we know from other projects that have been concerned about how much exposure they have of a rear facade or front facade, depending on the slope. So this was not meant to be the design of a building. It was meant to use existing language that we have in Fitchburg and in Madison and kind of a hybrid of those definitions.
And commissioners, I just want to make note that Mr. Connors had his 3 minutes during the public hearing. So unless you have clarifying questions to what he spoke about, that's kind of where we're
Yeah, thank you.
limited to.
Mark, well, we have this visual up in front of us. Is I want to call it the step back, the dimension from the rear facade to the point where the building steps up in height on the front. Is that limited? Or is that location based on the side elevation? I mean, I guess when I looked at this, I said, well, what's to dictate at what point do I have to step down or step up?
Yeah, having
So-
step up,
so
step
this
off
is-
by 2 feet
Yeah,
doesn't do you much good.
Yeah.
So the way I talked about this with Daphne as well, the way we would interpret this in this case is you could take 2 points. You could take 4 points, basically, this corner and this corner here.
Yeah.
And then below it, this corner and this corner.
Yeah.
And do that average. So the intent is to be as flexible as possible with the building measurement, recognizing that in this case, the front is for an MUA building or MUD downtown is limited at 60 feet. And, you know, we didn't want to then have such a big facade in the back. I don't know if that answers your question, but so in other words, there'd be multiple points measured there for the different step backs.
It just seems like we'd need to make sure that there was a fairly significant dimension from, you know, from a step back, so that like was mentioned, a 2-foot offset wouldn't really do anything for you there.
Right.
But if it were 15 feet, well, then it starts to make some sense.
I think the Castle Rock example is a great example to think of. Recall that the addition that you approved tonight is only four stories compared to 5.
Mhm.
And that's, I didn't ask them specifically why they didn't go with 5. I assume it has to do with parking ratios. You know, there's obviously other circumstances. But had that been a 5-story building or a 60-foot tall building in the front, they would have been way above our measurement in the back. But by keeping it at 4 stories in the front, or whatever the measurement was, 48 feet, whatever, it met our definition. So again, the drawings that we included in the packet are not intended to show an actual building. It's intended to give examples of what the impact would be in terms of the outline of the building envelope. And I think this is a far greater improvement over what we have in the ordinance today, because we did try to be responsive to Smart Growth, Madison, and others who provided input, recognizing that we were being pretty restrictive based on the zoning ordinance that had been drafted, which other communities are using. That ordinance is in use in Wausau, Fort Atkins, and Jefferson as written without any changes. And we obviously have a more greater desire for density. And so we are trying to be responsive. And what I thought I would do is use other ordinances from the area and use a hybrid, use the best example we could and hearken back to the previous ordinance, which measured at the front and focused on the front, but then had this allowance for some additional height on the other elevations.
I'm good with what we've got here. And I mean, it's not, as everything else, it's not perfect. But I think we've been going through this for quite a while. And I make a motion to approve it as presented. And if further revisions are needed in the future, we make them then. Is that a motion? That's my motion, yes.
I will second that motion.
For the ordinance as with all the revisions in
With
the
all
ordinance.
revisions.
Okay.
Yes. Any further discussion?
Just have a quick question.
Sure.
Mark, you've assimilated the bonus height provisions into kind of one section.
Yep.
And can you just remind me which districts
Sure.
can have a 2-story height bonus versus which districts can have a 1-story height bonus?
Yes. That is going to be, let's see. Actually, I think the easiest place would be to go to. I lost my. Page. There's two ways to get that information. All right, so we have each of the zoning districts, this is a little small to read, I'll go a little larger. So each of these now reference that other section, the consolidated section, which is where I'll go now. So that consolidated section got moved to Article 4. And I should have well, actually, that might not answer the question you have about, it just says 1 or 2 here, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so the answer to your question is then found in each of the zoning districts, so I can answer that very
Well,
quickly.
I guess maybe.
It's no change, is
There's
the
been no
answer.
changes
Right,
on it. I guess
exactly.
it doesn't matter at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
But I just want to show you just to give you the assurance. So, so here's MUA, or that's MUU. So here's MUA, which now talks about, here, an additional,
Okay.
any new shall. Just, no, that's the minimum. I'm sorry. Building height may exceed. Oh, yeah, percent. So here it's up to 12 feet in MUA. Okay, so that's an additional 12 feet. In MUU, we allow an additional 24 feet. Here it is, up to
Okay.
24 feet.
Okay.
So that's where that language is found.
Okay.
We have a motion and second on the table, so we will call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to our final agenda item, number 6 of revisions to the sign code, chapter 22 of the municipal code.
Oops. We are close.
I don't have any questions regarding this and would make a motion to approve the revisions to the sign code. Let's see.
Do you want me to go to anything?
No,
There's no questions, so.
I have no questions.
No public input.
I was
Minor
looking
changes.
for a motion, but it doesn't look like.
Well, so I try and remember what I said in my staff comments. So that the tradition has been, after hearing you wait, but what I said in my staff report, I think was, let me see what I wrote. Typically the delay is to give staff time to prepare criteria of approval, findings of fact, things like that. In this case, there isn't a need for something like that. And we didn't have any input from the public on this at all. So obviously it's your discretion. You could, I don't see any reason why you couldn't proceed with this, but I just wanted to point out that the tradition has been recently, recent tradition. But there are different circumstances at play here. So I'll leave it up to you.
Are you finished with that motion?
I am finished with that.
Well, then I'll second it.
And that's to recommend adoption of that as well. Okay.
Any further discussion? Right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And that will bring us to the end of our agenda. So I will go ahead and move. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for sharing.
Made it through.